بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. And again, thank you all so much for signing in for this really powerful webinar that I personally wanted to see go live. I personally wanted to attend and benefit from. You see, about a year ago, last year, I think, I got the news of a young man who was healthy, who was fit, who had a wife and 2 children, and also aging parents, who just suddenly died, with a heart attack. And there was nothing wrong with him before. SubhanAllah, Allah decreed, and he passed away. And just hearing that news, even though I didn't know this person personally, it hits you, right? I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, and I'm like, SubhanAllah, like, it really hits you like this. If this happens to me, what would happen to my children? Now, of course, we all understand from an aqeedah perspective, and we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of our children. We know that Allah is the sustainer, razzaq. But what is within our means, right? We're there tying your camel and having trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's within our means? So a few days after that, subhanAllah, just as if it's a test, from shaitan or something, a test came where I get a letter in the mailbox. And the letter just had this, nice picture of a family. And it said, hey, look at this happy young family. Well, guess what? The husband passed away recently in an accident and left his wife and 2 children. But guess what? The wife and the husband signed up for life insurance. And if you have life insurance, you don't have to worry about a thing. You can secure your children's future. And like subhanAllah, look how they market it. Look how they kind of pull you on emotional strings, right? You feel like as a father, as a son, as a husband, you're like, should I sign up or not? I know that's not halal for life insurance is not permitted in Islam. I was really confused. And this is where Sheikh Joe came in. Sheikh Joe, is a friend and someone who I trust with his knowledge. I'm going to read you his bio in a minute. Someone who's studied this stuff. He understands the traditional Islamic knowledge as well as the latest financial models. And I had to just pick up the phone and say, Sheikh Joe, I need your help. I need to, first of all, kind of not just myself, but for everyone in particular Muslim, write an article on how do you balance? How do you secure children's future, financially, but also spiritually, physically, socially? It's a top of the mind question. It's something that boggles in the back of your mind. It's always there, and no matter how much, subhanAllah, sometimes maybe it's lack of iman or something, but it's always there. And how can I solve this issue? How can I feel like I'm as best as I can? I've tied my camel, and the rest is of course upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, Sheikh Joe wrote an article, which I share with you in the emails, and it was went viral. People really benefit a lot from that. And I thought, let's work together. And we start working closely with Sheikh Joe. I'm going to share with you a program that we're going to be launching very soon, Sheikh Joe, inshallah, which I find extremely fascinating. But more importantly, I said, Sheikh Joe, let's go live. Let's go live with this stuff. Let's just go out there, do a webinar, a 1-hour webinar, and just talk about this issue head on. And the way this is going to work is actually it's going to be like a Q&A level. So I'm going to be almost representing you guys, the audience. I'll be the angel's advocate, whatever you want to call it, where I'll be asking questions and kind of really and really saying, well, what about this? Because sometimes we feel uncomfortable. Maybe in an Islamic setting, we feel like very uncomfortable to ask a question. Maybe we feel like maybe it's not appropriate to ask a question. Well, the Productive Muslim company is all about being practical, all about really bringing faith and spirituality in a practical way and helping the personal development journey spiritually, physically, socially, and now inshallah ta'ala financial as well. So with us today is Sheikh Joe Bradford, who is an American scholar of Islam. He holds a Master's of Islamic Law from the University of Medina and studied for 20 plus years traditionally in the Muslim world. His expertise is an ethical finance advisor on issues involving Muslims and finance, especially in North America, but also international as well. He's got quite a good expertise with other jurisdictions as well. He's got a number of platforms, and inshallah, once he starts speaking, I'll actually be typing up his platforms in the chat. He's got mywasiya.com, which basically creates a legally validated Islamic will, especially in the US. He helps you to vet your investments in the stock exchange through a platform called Zoe.finance. He helps you plan your wealth through Money Coach. Again, we'll type these up inshallah ta'ala on the chat so you have a reference to them inshallah ta'ala. And also he does a lot of writing on his personal blog and website, joebradford.net. So his goal is to create value for the average Muslim, right? So all of us, we have jobs, we work hard, we have old parents, we have young families perhaps, all kids about to go to college, or maybe they just graduated. Maybe we're grandparents. Maybe we're just, we're young professionals. Whatever stage of life we're at, we always have this. There's always a financial decisions we need to make, and his goal is to help you demystify this financial world, inshallah. And more importantly, Sheikh Joe is a family man. So he worked in the corporate world. He now had to navigate his own, financial issues. And alhamdulillah, he recently got one of his sons graduated from college debt free. So, which is, again, for those who live in the US, know how that's a huge achievement by itself. So he understands what it's like to try to navigate the financial world on your own, and he's here to help you, inshallah. So hopefully he'll be our guide today. And Sheikh Joe is double checking with you if you're live with us, and if your video is still on, inshallah. I think we're ready to get started.
I am, and I think I just turned the video on.
Wonderful. Yes,
can you see me now?
Nice and bright, inshallah. Excellent. All right, so the way this is going to work, like I said to everybody, we're going to have like a 40-minute conversation. It'll be Q&A, and then we'll talk more about the program that myself, Sheikh Joe, working on together, inshallah. We're launching very, very soon, and then we'll open up for Q&A, inshallah. So I hope you guys will stick with us this hour. We'll try to keep it within an hour and 10 minutes. And inshallah, make the most of it. Again, we have about 276 people joining from around the world. So this is fascinating, and I'm really excited to have you guys on board. So Sheikh Joe, I think, and you probably heard the introduction, right? There's always that pressing concern, right? That back of the mind nagging feeling. If you're the breadwinner, whether you're a father or a mother, or a son or a daughter, or a husband or wife, there's always that nagging feeling of that, of securing your future, your family's future. So why is that, sort of the first question is, why is that the most pressing need? What's actually going on in the back of our minds as we always have this worry, right? That's kind of like lingering on, no matter how much money we make, no matter how much, how many, years we've lived, there's always that lingering financial anxiety that's playing in the back of our mind. Can you just talk to us about that, inshallah?
Right. So, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa mawala wa ba'd. First of all, I want to thank everybody who showed up today early and live, alhamdulillah, and also those who will be watching later on. Jazakallah khairan to Muhammad Faris and Productive Muslim for putting this on. And I really hope that it can be of benefit to you all today. When we talk about, to speak to your question, when we talk about this pressing concern as a breadwinner, as parents, I think all of us can think back to something that our own parents have done in their lifetimes to provide for us, that in hindsight may have seemed strange to us, or maybe not optimal. Maybe they didn't make the best decision, but they were doing that to provide for the family. And our concern, the concern that we have for our children, is one that speaks to the values that we hold dearest. It speaks to how we see ourselves, and we see our legacy that we're leaving behind. We know that the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا مَاتَ ابْنُ آدَمْ انْقَطَعَ عَمَلُهُ إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ, that when the son of Adam, the child of Adam, dies, their actions are cut off except for three things: علم نافع ينتفع به وولد صالح يدعو له وصدقة جارية, and some beneficial knowledge that people utilize, a righteous child that prays for him, or a perpetual charity, or a charity that produces or benefits in perpetuity. So we all have this innate concern. It's something that goes beyond what we say, goes beyond what we think. It is psychological. It is in fact spiritual. It's one of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by the bond of parent and child. وَوَالِدٍ وَمَا وَلَدٍ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears, he says, and by the parent and its progeny. So there's something that goes beyond just, oh well, I want to have children, I want to leave a legacy, there's something innate. It's a core value that we have, and we all feel a certain sense of responsibility towards caring for those that are in our family, whether that be our parents, if they're aging, whether that be our children, our siblings. We all have that innately. It's something that even for those who do a bad job at it, feel regret later in life for not doing more for their children. And so I think that each and every one of us, when we start to think about these pressing concerns, like Muhammad, for example, is there anything in your parents' life that you can think about that they might have done to provide for you? Is there like one big decision that one of your parents or someone in your family made that you didn't necessarily understand at the time, but you were but you can tell that they did it to take care of the family?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember a time when, so we grew up, so even though we're born in Tanzania, East Africa, we actually grew up in Saudi Arabia, and we're living an expat lifestyle. And at that point, there was a decision made to migrate, right? Migrate to Canada and start life from scratch in Canada. And it was actually a conscious decisions by my parent to stay in Saudi as expatriates, even though there was no promise of citizenship and all that stuff, because of the benefits that came of basically working expatriate lifestyle. And they forego their sort of all the the whole migration sort of world and how that would that lead to, because of us and raising us as a family as well. So that sticks in my mind as something that something decision they made in order to quote unquote secure the children's future.
What do you think? Why do you think that they made the decision not to go to Canada?
I think for them it's just, again, the uncertainty, right? They weren't sure, even though my dad got a job offer and technically speaking he would have migrated to Canada and started from scratch, but just the uncertainty there versus him, the certainty, quote unquote, of him living, working for his employer in Saudi as an expatriate, and which also had a lot of benefits, education allowances and housing allowances and all that stuff. So right. that was the decision that they, well, should we go for something uncertain, even though maybe they're high up risk, or do we just stop and say, this alhamdulillah, say, they have a motto, right? To a bird in the hand versus two in the bush kind of thing.
Right. Now let's drill down on that. So, you said that they didn't want to take that opportunity, although many people jump at the opportunity to migrate to a country like Canada because they say, well, there's a social welfare net, there's going to be social services that even if we fall on bad times, there's healthcare, there's opportunity, so on and so forth. You said that it was probably the uncertainty of that decision. What do you think was the driving emotion behind the uncertainty? What was it that they didn't want to face if they had gone there?
I guess the risk, fear of loss, fear of just making a bad decision and regretting later.
Right. So risk is a huge issue in caring for your family. And a lot of times the reason why we don't take risks, because everything in life carries a certain amount of risk. One of the reasons why we don't take risks is precisely for what you mentioned, because of fear. And we are many times fearful, rightfully so, and many times we make decisions based on irrational fears, fears that don't have a place in reality. I think with your situation, alhamdulillah, I think your parents made a good decision in kind of weighing the knowns and the unknowns that they had in front of them. But you mentioned one of those key emotions and those key values. So a parent will naturally do things for their children that can seem irrational out of love for that child. They can also do things that will seem irrational to many other people who are probably wondering why your parents forgoed such a great opportunity out of fear for something that would happen. They might say, well, if I move to Canada, maybe I'll have that social, that social support through the government, but will I be able to protect my child socially? Where will their faith be? Sure, I'll have money. Will I be able to earn halal income? So that's actually a healthy type of fear, and that pushed them towards making better decisions. Some people, I'll give you an example of a client of mine. He said that, when being raised by a single mother, his mother never wanted him to miss out. She never wanted him to feel like he was less. And so she had this immense love for her child. And that motivated her to try and put him in the best schools, to make sure that he had the best education, to provide for him everything that she could. But another problem that he faced later on, and that she faced later on, was that she did so through maxing out credit cards. So she actually, as a single mother, didn't have much of an education. She didn't have much of opportunity, and her fear of providing for her child actually pushed her down a road to make a very bad, detrimental decision to her financial health and even her spiritual and emotional health later on, because years later she was burdened with tons of debt. And now her children, who were earning a lot, were trying to do the best that they can by their mother. We're now dealing with helping her pay that off. So I believe that, that our concern to take care of our children talks to those core values, the hope that we see in building a legacy with them, the love that we have for them, the fear that we have in not being able to live up to their expectations and live up to the responsibility. And those three things, are really what this topic is about. It's very easy to talk about financial issues. It's harder to talk about the beliefs that we have about finance. It's harder to talk about the emotions that we feel when we deal with money.
Powerful stuff. I mean, again, probably I'm asking this question now in the audience, what emotions are driving your financial decisions for your children? I'd love for you guys to type in right there and share some of those emotions that are driving you, the financial decision you have for your children. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, for some of us, just looking at our bank account statements gives us the jitters, right? So like we don't even look at it because we don't want to see it. Some of us, the idea of a budget freaks us out, and it's just, and Sheikh Joe is talking about something very important, the idea of just the emotions is driving this stuff. Because a lot of times, yes, we talk about the importance of budget and debt-free and have a retirement fund, and we all know this financial stuff, but most of it at least. But then when we come to somewhere the emotions and it's almost a psycho-spiritual things that get in the way is what's driving. It's sometimes kind of like makes this so hard, makes it really, really uncomfortable.
Yeah, and just to add to that, a lot of people say, well, if I had the money, then I would make the decision. I know tons of people that have lots of money and they never make a decision. It's not about the money or the lack thereof. It's really about the spiritual and emotional fortitude that you have in making a decision and pushing forward.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the sort of next question. I think this is where we want to start off here, right? We want to make sure, because this is about talking about faith and personal finance. And I think sometimes when we talk about securing our children's future, spirituality and faith is it's there, but we want to make sure how does it integrate. So what role does our spiritual life and our emotional well-being play in the financial security of our children?
So, in just now, in answering the last question, I talked about I mentioned unknowns and knowns, and the knowns in our life, we are many times prevented from acting on them because of our emotions. And the unknowns in our life, we are many times prevented from acting on also because of our emotions. And we do so because we have a fear of what we know, the known knowns, and we have a fear of the known unknowns. Meaning that we know that, for example, at our jobs, we're making a certain amount of money, but yet we still make bad decisions with that money. Why? Because we're being driven by beliefs about that money. We have known unknowns. Well, I don't know if I'm going to retire at such and such age. I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford children's schooling. So what do? I will kind of cocoon myself away, and instead of putting trust in Allah and acting out according to what He's ordered me to do, I will simply take no action at all. And so it's this paralysis. We have a paralysis of analysis. We analyze the situation so much that we neither take proactive steps to make ourselves better, nor preventative steps to make ourselves, to protect where we're at. And so, just by the passing of time, we degrade and we get worse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, say, if I had known the unseen, then I would have gathered all good for myself, and bad would have never come to me. Bad would have never touched me. And commenting on this, scholars of tafsir said that, this meant that had the Prophet ﷺ had full knowledge of everything that was going to happen, both past and present and future, then he would have been making arrangements to essentially budget for himself and make sure that nothing bad ever happened to him, and that only good things happened to him. But even the Prophet ﷺ did not have knowledge of the unseen, and so he had to plan according to what he knew and what was presented in front of him, and then have tawakkul and rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the rest. Even with dealing with some of his greatest adversaries in life, such as the hypocrites of Medina, who were actively plotting against him. كَانَ يَقْبَلْ مِنْهُمْ ظَوَاهِرَهُمْ وَيُوَكِّلُ سَرَائِرَهُم إِلَى اللَّهِ. The hadith of Jabir, that he said that the Prophet ﷺ used to take from them whatever was apparent, and then he would rely upon Allah as to what they were hiding, or regarding what they were hiding. So, taking initiative is important, having reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is important, but there has to be initiative there as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. So when you have the initiative, then rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Where does that initiative come from? That initiative comes from a very deep sense of what we talked about before, love, hope, and fear, which in reality, although we talk about projecting it onto our children, the love we have for our children, hope we have in building a legacy for them, the fear that we have of not providing for them, those are actually the pillars of the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. That any act of ibadah is, has the love of Allah in it, the fear of Allah in it, and hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in it. And so when we actualize, right, or operationalize the idea of ibadah, even in our finances, then we will have the initiative to rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and not fear ever being left out or not having enough, because we know that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us at any particular time will always be enough. وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَل لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. And so whoever is mindful of Allah, who has taqwa of Allah, right, then Allah will give him a way out of any situation that he's in, and sustain him from wherever, or from places he never imagined. And whoever relies on Allah, then He is enough for him. Allah says, أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِكَافٍ عَبْدَهُ وَيُخَوِّفُونَكَ بِالَّذِينَ مِن دُونِهِ. Is Allah not enough for His servant, but they will make you fearful of those other than Him. So our spiritual life plays into our decisions about money. Many times we will spend frivolously because we want to please ourselves, because we don't feel a sense of pleasure from the resources that we have, because we're not directing those resources towards our ultimate goal, which is Jannah. So, building up a spiritual base and an emotional a base of emotional well-being and spiritual fortitude will allow us to be able to make decisions and not fear the outcomes, right? So there's a concept in psychology and counseling and therapy, that is that you commit to the process, you do not commit to the outcome. What happens is we feel so emotional about about the fear of not making enough or the fear of loss, that we anticipate the loss and we never anticipate the gain. And if the gain comes, we think that it's somehow wrong because of the way that we see ourselves emotionally and spiritually. And so we have to commit to the process. We don't know if we're going to lose or if we're going to gain, but we have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we will be cared for. And there's a big difference between the two. There's a big difference between saying, I know that I'm doing what I have to do, and I don't know where the cards may fall. And then saying, no, I know exactly where the cards may fall. And then when the outcome is different than what we wanted, what do? We blame someone else. We blame shaitan. We blame our spouse. We blame our kids. We blame our co-workers. And we don't realize that it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who had destined that for us and was protecting us from something even greater. So, living with a heart that's attached to Allah, but, swimming in this existence, is one of the keys to building a sense of emotional well-being that detaches you from the outcomes and the material effects of things, and allows you to navigate a life that is focused on the ultimate well-being and using what you have in this life for the ultimate well-being, and that is entry into Jannah.
SubhanAllah. So again, make sure everyone gets this. It might seem like a spiritual lesson here, but it has a direct impact, just like Sheikh Joe mentioned here, direct impact. The fact that building spiritual base, so the mindsets, the values, the rituals that you're building, that's part of you securing children's future, because that's part of you connecting your heart to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who ultimately will take care of the outcomes of your children and children's situation and the people you rely and care about. I think, Sheikh Joe, if you could just comment on the story in Surah Al-Kahf, right? And how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the spiritual life of a person as the reason of why he took care of the children of that righteous man.
Right. So, several of the stories that we have in the Quran kind of point to these lessons. One is the story of Musa and Khidr, alayhim salam, where Musa alayhi salam is accompanying Al-Khidr, and Al-Khidr is kind of teaching him practical, pragmatic lessons, live in real life. And one of those lessons, they pass through a small town, they go by a small farm, and they see a wall that is falling apart. And so Al-Khidr goes and he starts to rebuild the wall. And Musa says to him later on, "Lo shi'ta lattakhadhta alayhi ajra." If you wish, you could have went and charged them for doing that work for them, right? And that was one of the reasons why Al-Khidr and Musa split. And when he explained to him why he did that, he said, that wall was hiding a stash of money that was for the children, the orphans that were living in that farm or that home. وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا, and their father was a righteous man. فَأَرَادَ رَبُّكَ أَن يَبْلُغَ أَشُدَّهُمَا وَيَسْتَخْرِجَ كَنزَهُمَا رَحْمَةً مِّن رَبِّكَ. So your Lord wished that they would reach adulthood first and then go out and be able to retrieve what their father had left, that treasure that their father had left for them. In this story are several lessons, both spiritually and financially. And it's not in the actions of Musa and Khidr. It's in the implications of why they were doing what they were doing. So Musa alayhi salam was looking at the effect of his actions in the immediate sense. That, okay, what value did I bring into the world immediately? Let's charge for that value. Sometimes you don't do things because of immediate compensation, because you want to put whatever you can of good into the world, and you have reliance on Allah, that good is always going to come back to you, even if it does so in an intangible way. Think about that. I do something good by these children who are unable to protect themselves. I don't ask for anything from them. And then years later, they benefit from the value of the work that I did, preserving their own wealth for them. And then they make dua for me and my children and children's children. And so that counts as righteousness on my part. Their father, who was mentioned or alluded to in the verse, وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا, and their father was righteous, is one of the main reasons why Al-Khidr was ordered to rebuild the wall. Because their father, or some scholars of tafsir would say their father or their grandfather, was a righteous man. And so because of his righteousness, because of his spiritual fortitude, because of his willingness to put good out into the world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved the good that he had built for him. Now, this is not just the idea of preparing our children spiritually, because, and many times this verse is, well, if you're righteous, your children will be righteous. Inshallah, you hope so. You don't have any guarantees about that, but you would hope so. But when being righteous in and of yourself and doing good in and of yourself, you can expect that there's going to be some good that's going to come back to you through that. Future generations, not only were his future generations protected in their own righteousness, but the money that was left to them was protected as well. And this points to another important point, that part of being righteous is not merely the very overt things of religiosity that we associate with being religious or righteous. It's not just growing a beard and reading the Quran and wearing a thobe and doing whatever, right? But it's also making money that if you died, your children were going to have a home to stay in, to have enough money to stash away under a wall in savings that needed to be protected. So it's building that, it's taking that spiritual fortitude and building a spiritual treasure to leave for your family, as well as building a material or a financial treasure for your family to benefit from.
MashaAllah. I love that. I mean, I remember I've read this verse many times and always had the same thought everyone else. Okay, as long as I'm kind of original side, as though the father is good, then when the father's righteous, and inshallah my kids will take care of. But then Sheikh Joe rightly pointed out, actually, wait, he had a treasure. The father had a treasure left behind. That means this guy was working towards something. This person was actually, building up a treasure for his children. He wasn't just sitting back and kind of expecting that just the spirituality on its own will take care of his children. The fact that he left the treasure behind for his children. So, I mean, alhamdulillah, I think we're doing a lot, and I'm going to be very conscious of our time. So I'm going to skip the next question, actually. I'm going to skip this question. We kind of spoke about preparing for futures largely unknown. But let's get more practical. So in the realm of financial planning, right, what are some of the known unknowns that we can deal with here and now?
So, some of the solutions to our biggest problems are many times the simplest. They elude us because we think that they're too simple. We need a very complicated solution, because we like to think that our problems are bigger than they are, that they're more complex than they are. And in reality, it starts with what we talked about before, the emotional well-being, the spiritual fortitude, and then simple practices that we don't associate with finance are actually extremely spiritual and extremely financial. Al-Imam Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, the greatest scholars of Islam, and one of the main students of Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, was asked, why don't you go and write a book of zuhud? Why don't you go and write a book about asceticism, giving up the worldly life? Because in his time, it was kind of in vogue for people to write books on asceticism. They would gather the narrations that they have, contemplate, why leaving off the dunya was good, and how what it means to be detached from the worldly life and be attached to Allah. And he answered them in a very intriguing way. He said, كيف وقد كتبت كتاب البيوع. He said, how, when I've already written a book on transactions? if we're truly implementing what we learn in the realm of transactions and finance and the Islamic principles, we will be doing a form of, we will be living practically a form of spirituality that will benefit us both spiritually as well as financially. For example, Ibn Qudam al-Maqdisi, he mentions in Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin. Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin is a very beautiful book. If you don't know it, it's a summary of Ibn al-Jawzi's book called Minhaj al-Qasidin. Minhaj al-Qasidin is a summary of Imam al-Ghazali's book, Ihya Ulum al-Din. So we can say that these are the insights of three of the greatest scholars of Islam, Ibn Qudama, Ibn al-Jawzi, and Imam al-Ghazali. In one section of the section of muhasaba, of basically accounting, which not in the modern sense, but there's a, it's funny, it's a little, yeah, anachronistic to, to project back, but essentially that's what it means. They're talking about taking the soul to account. He says, every believer should wake up every single day and look at every single hour, know every single minute, know every single second as a treasure chest. You can fill that treasure chest with gold, you can fill it with coal, or you can fill it with nothing. So on the day of judgment, if it's filled with gold, then you will delight in the riches that you've amassed. If you fill it with coal, then you're only going to be putting fuel on the fire that had been prepared for you. And if you fill it with nothing, you may not win and you may not lose, but you will feel great regret and sorrow, and that is one of the greatest losses as well. If we take into consideration these spiritual lessons and start to apply them to our life, we can have extremely effective forms of time management, of money management. Think about every single cent. There's different ways of accounting. We talk about financial planning, and this is where I'm going with this. What we're getting back to is the idea that a very basic spiritual practice can benefit our finances. So there's the idea of not just accounting in ways of assets, minus expenses, assets minus liabilities, that type of thing, cash versus accrual. There's also in just personal budgeting, which was one of the things that is extremely important for us to be practicing, is thinking of every single dollar that comes into your bank account as having a job. So treat that dollar like you treat that second of time. What is this dollar doing? Is this dollar being given in charity? Is this dollar being spent on my family? Is this dollar being spent for improving myself? Or am I wasting this dollar? Or is this dollar sitting and accruing that which is going to earn me the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When we start having intentionality about what our money is doing, we stop allowing the money to control us, and we control the money. And there is so much more that can be said about in the realm of financial planning. But one of the known unknowns is we know that we have a certain amount of money coming in. The unknown is, what is that money going to do for us? And that's where the decision comes in. And we many times are like, well, it's unknown, I just won't make a decision. And so, we have people who have very good careers, make lots of money, and their children graduate from college. They've never saved a cent for them because they thought, oh, this is an unknown, it's something in the future, it's a long time from now. And you think about it, 18 years, your child's going to graduate from high school 17, 18 years old. It seems like yesterday when they were born. Your parents are retiring, they're getting old, they need health, they need long-term care. It seems like yesterday when they were caring for you. So those are known unknowns. We know that one day the child will graduate. We know that one day our parents will need us to help them. We know one day that we will die. And so part of financial planning, not just financial planning, but life planning, is saying, okay, there are certain inevitabilities that I will face in life. That may be a better term than just known unknowns. There are inevitabilities that I will face. How can I prepare for them without understanding the outcome? I don't know if I'll die tomorrow or if I'll die in 30 years, but I know that I'm going to die. So what do I need to do to protect myself, protect my family, make things the best that they can with what I have right now? Okay, let me count every dollar. Let me make sure everyone has, let me start with a proper budget. Let me know how much money's coming into my account and how much is going out. This is simple consumption, right? Of just understanding your inputs and your outputs, a caloric intake versus caloric expenditure. There's a lot of different analogies that we can give, but we can deal with things like planning for old age, planning for our children's education, planning for our even taking a vacation with our family, making Umrah every year. We can plan for all of that, even if we're not making that much money. I mean, I know people that make very modest incomes. I'm talking maybe $35,000 to $45,000 a year. They make Umrah every year, and without any strain on themselves. Why? Because they give a job to every dollar that they have, and they plan ahead for something that is for them an inevitability. They make it, I'm going to go for Umrah this year. That intention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees that good intention and then helps that make that inevitability a reality.
SubhanAllah. We're running actually short of time. I know you have a lot to share. I wanted to tackle this big question because I think this is part of someone said, well, okay, known unknowns. All right, you know what? I'm just going to take life insurance, right? Nice and easy. Take life insurance or any other form of insurance, and boom, my life is sorted. I just have to pay premiums every month. My future is guaranteed. My kids' futures are guaranteed. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Why do I have to go through this headache of budgeting and planning and all that stuff?
Right. So that's the sales pitch, right? One of the first things you need to know about the insurance industry is that people that sell you insurance are not advisors. They may come and they say, I'm an insurance advisor, or I'm a financial advisor, or if they are selling you an insurance policy, they are an insurance broker. They are a commission salesman. And the very first payment that you will give them for a life insurance policy, for example, actually goes to them as commission. It's like, oh, I'm putting $3,000 down to start the policy. They actually get that. That doesn't go towards your policy. Your policy payments start the month after. So, that's a sales pitch that people have. They feel that, I'll just pay this one amount and then I'll be good for the rest of my life. I think if you read the article, we go through a lot of the different numbers as to why investing is a better return on your money than simply taking out an insurance policy. There are certain cases in which people have different, very specific special needs that they should seek advice from a fiduciary, fee-based person that's not making a commission off of them, but just taking advice from somebody that they pay for their advice about how and when insurance fits into their financial plan. But for most of us, we're not doing enough with what we have, and then we're going to go and take on an insurance. This is a real case. Someone that I've consulted for in the past had actually been sold on an insurance policy with, the grandiose, you're going to be able to retire and your kids' education is going to be taken care of. And if you die, then you're going to get even more money than that. All you have to do is pay into this policy for the next 15 years. Do you know how much money they were paying every month? More than $1,500 US.
SubhanAllah.
Basically, exhausting all of their expendable income to pay into this insurance policy, which they later found out that if they miss one payment or they cancel within the first 10 years, they get nothing. They get absolutely nothing.
SubhanAllah.
Now, I want each and every one of you to just go online look up an online calculator like at bankrate.com, put online Roth IRA calculator, or online investment calculator, and just, put in first month of $1,500 and then $1,500 a month for 15 years. And just see how much money you would get with a very modest return, a halal return, a modest halal return of 5 to 6%, compared to what you get with, what's claimed to be guaranteed income for you. So, there are a lot of problems with the way that insurance is regulated, the way that it's sold, and the way that it is, that we're kind of bludgeoned with it. When in reality, if we made smart budgeting choices, smart savings choices, smart investment choices, then we wouldn't have to be pouring that money down a hole to hope that maybe in the future we're going to get the payout that they promised us.
SubhanAllah. And again, I put a link to the article that you wrote, Secure Children's Future, because in that article, you actually give a specific example saying, give two examples. One person pays premiums for life insurance for 15 years. One person puts halal investment, fund for 15 years, and just gives you real numbers of just the return. You were like, what? It doesn't even make sense anymore to put into fund. But again, like I said, the sales pitch, the way they make it sound, make it very powerful. Again, and this is some things we'll talk more about in upcoming program in more details. I'm seeing some questions about equity bonds and what is halal, is not halal. We'll talk more about that as well. What you're going to share. So we spoke. So again, just coming almost to the end of this, one, we spoke about the spirituality. And I think for me, this is a key message that we don't talk about in personal finance. I mean, how many of you attended a personal finance program that starts with spirituality? A lot of times talk about finance and equity and bonds and halal and savings. Even in some of the Islamic finance banking world, sometimes we just get straight into the finished financial instruments without realizing some of the emotional and spiritual perspective that we need to take on board as part of us, making sure that we are making those, being good stewards, being good Khalifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth and fulfilling our purpose in this life with the trust, the amana of money that Allah has given us. Second, we spoke a bit about the sort of the small things like, give every dollar a job, and making sure that, you think about these financial decisions, when next time you get a call from this life insurance and try to play on emotional strings, you're equipped with numbers, you're equipped with knowledge, saying, wait a second, does this even make sense? And actually challenging back and hopefully making better financial decisions. And again, we'll talk more about, what those decisions are in a minute, inshallah ta'ala. But I wanted to switch gears here a little bit, and I'll probably how we form. This is something where I have to skip this one at the moment. We'll come back to it towards the end, inshallah ta'ala. But the idea of family, right? The idea of helping people, the idea of the social aspect, right? Social aspect. So I get back to this question: how do you plan with the social aspect of family? Where does that come in? Where does it come into, inshallah ta'ala?
So with the social aspect of our of planning for our life, not just our finances, and this is why I really like the term life planning more than just financial planning, because our financial decisions have an effect on the rest of our life. The rest of our life has an effect on our financial plans. Is to understand that the concept of barakah is at the center of all of our actions, and one of the greatest treasures that we can be gifted is the barakah and the blessing of qana'ah, of having contentment, and understanding that we are responsible for others, and that when we fulfill the rights of others, then they will fulfill our rights, and when we are responsible for others, then they will be responsible for us. And what comes to mind here is two things. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about inheritance in the Quran, He says, آباؤكم وأبناؤكم لا تدرون أيهم أقرب لكم نفعا. Your fathers and your sons, you don't know which of them will be closer to you in benefit. You don't know who, of keeping your family ties and doing well by your family. You never know where the benefit's going to come from. So Silat al-Rahim, this is another, core value. Another thing that we have to value as Muslims and is essential to our well-being as humans, interacting with others. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in many verses, وَتَوَاصَوْنَ بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْنَ بِالصَّبْرِ, right? That the people, they mutually advise each other to have patience. They mutually advise each other with the truth. This, al-mu'minu lil-mu'mini kal-bunyan, and the Prophet ﷺ put his fingers, shabbaka bayna asabihi, he intertwined his fingers. The believer for the other believer is like a building. And he put his fingers together. يُشُدُّ بَعْضُهُ بَعْضًا. They support one another. Building a support structure through family, right? Through neighbors, كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يوصي بالجار حتى ظننا أنه سيورثه. The Prophet ﷺ used to advise us to be good to our neighbors to the extent we thought he was going to make the neighbor an inheritor from us. Having strong families with parents, grandparents, not just living the nuclear family, but having generational input from elders around. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ لَا يَرْحَمْ صَغِيرُنَا وَلَا يُوَقِّرْ كَبِيرُنَا وَلَا يَعْرِفُ لِعَالِمِنَا حَقَّهُ. That he is not from us the one who does not have mercy on our children, who does not have respect and reverence for our elders, and who does not know the rights of our scholars. So, one of the ways that we can actually secure our future for our children is for them to know that there are other people that are there for them when we're not there. The Prophet ﷺ said, خَالُ الرَّجُلْ مِثْلُ أَبِيهِ. The maternal uncle of a man is like his father, right? So our uncles, our aunts, these are people that should be involved in our life. Our grandparents, the grandmothers and grandfathers, cousins, we should have connections with them. And we have those connections. We have that social support network that when times get tough, we can band together. We can come together. And if you're out there and you're a convert to Islam, you've accepted Islam, then it's not just about marrying into a Muslim family. It's also about keeping connections with your non-Muslim family members, as well as broadening and having mentors and others in the Muslim community that you keep in contact the rest of your life, and really developing a spiritual family as well with other converts and with mentors and things like that in our life. So, this concept is alluded to in a hadith, and I'll stop here. The Prophet ﷺ will actually go in, in one of the courses I teach, we go into a lot of detail on this one hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said that the hadith is Ibn Majah, he said, whoever sells a home and doesn't take the money and put it in a similar investment or asset, then it's more likely that Allah will not bless him in that transaction. What does that mean? It means when you're making decisions for your family, extended family, and the people around you, and you don't take into consideration their needs, and you don't plan for their well-being as well as your own, it's more than likely that your life will become devoid of barakah and devoid of blessing. So we can form a financial plan centered around the lives of others, putting ourselves at the core connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
SubhanAllah, powerful. And again, like people mentioned, we live in very individual societies where we think, okay, it's just me, my spouse, my kids, maybe my parents or their primary parents. We don't realize this bigger network. And this is historically, that's not how humans used to live, right? Humans used to live in families and groups, usually, in villages together, in towns together, and there's always that social network. I personally know of a case of 3 children who lost their father at a very, very young age. And subhanAllah, the family support, right? The uncles and aunties and even family friends who supported them. These kids, mashallah, their education, they got the best education, they went to the best schools, they graduated without their father being there. And they had, again, a very modest family, and everyone else around was very modest income, but everyone chipped in, everyone supported, and now, mashallah, the kids are doing very well for themselves and supporting their mother and growing. And this idea of the importance. Now, of course, it's not about you sitting there thinking, which of my rich uncles should link up to here? But the idea is that really just making sure of those pure connections, and that's why something in the Islamic will. I remember in your website, my wasiya, one of the corners I found very important was who will be the guardian of your children after you die, and actually naming somebody. And I remember putting them when having discussion with my wife about it, like, well, if we die, who will take care of our children? And actually putting the name and actually asking the consent, saying, is it okay if I pass away that you take care of my children? And they're saying, yeah, sure, we'll take care of their children. And just how reassuring that is, just to have that as a family.
But think about what goes into that decision. You have to have somebody that's close enough to your children where you trust their care for them, and you also trust your children will be confident and comfortable with them. And that takes, that takes like a level of symbiosis and connection that, doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. So yes, next time when you feel like, oh no, another family visit, or no, my God, my cousin's visiting us this month, I'm with a headache, trust me, that's you investing in your future children.
Right.
Again, we're running out of time, so I want to make sure that we spoke about this one, and we've probably spoke a lot of things. I guess maybe the last question is, how can we learn more about this connection of faith, money, and practical decision making? Because I think this is what this whole webinar is about, and I know that we've just scratched the surface. And I'll let you lead in with this, and we'll sort of go into deep in what we have in store, like something that we're both excited about. So if you can start off, inshallah.
So to answer this question, how can we learn more about the connection between faith, money, and practical decision making? There's some homework that I want to give you today, and then I want to tell you about something that, alhamdulillah, having partnered with Productive Muslim on providing for you and an opportunity for you. The homework that I want to give you today is, I want you to go offline. I want you to take out a regular piece of paper, okay? And I want you to write down 5 major things that you do every single day, and spanning from the morning when you wake up until the evening when you go to sleep. And I want you to think about which of those things are important to your faith, and which of those things would be better if you had more money. And then I want you to say, I want you to go and write again 5 major things that if you had no money worries in the world, you had no cares in the world, how would you do those differently? And then I want you to write a third column. So right now, the first column is 5 things that you do every day, that you do now every day. The second is 5 things that if I had no money worries in the world, how would I do those things different? And the third column is, if I were going to die tomorrow, how would I do those things different? And I think if you go through those 3 columns and you look at the actions that you're doing and the decisions that you're making for them, you will start to see which of them actually has to do with money, which of them actually have to do with faith, and which of them have to do with both. And you'll be able to make better decisions about where you find yourself between those 2 extremes.
Beautiful. And I'm going to reiterate one more time just to make sure I understand you, understand everyone else. So first column, right? Write down 5 major things you do every day from morning to evening, and ask yourself which of these related to money. Is that correct? That's the first column?
Yes.
All right. Second column is, if I had all the money in the world, I had no issues with money, what would I do differently? Is it, what would have been things I'll do differently?
What would I do differently? Yes.
What do differently? Okay. And the third column is, well, if I drop dead today, also what I'll do differently, right?
If I had, if I had one day left in the world, what would I be doing instead?
What would you do instead? And ask yourself, which of these questions, when you write those things down, look at those things, ask yourself, which of these related to money, which is related to faith, and then that should guide your financial decisions. That should guide your financial decisions well.
You'll start to know, and then when you get between column 2 and column 3, you're going to start seeing that, well, you know what, I'm not dying, I don't know if I'm going to die tomorrow, and I don't have all the money in the world. What can I do that's right there in the middle? How can I make a decision that's going to be best for my afterlife and best for my life right now? Because this is my ideal life in column 2, and this is what I'm afraid of, and I'm making up for lost time in column 3. We want to be right there in the middle. We want to be practical, pragmatic, but also faithful. And I think that if you go through that exercise, you're going to start to understand how both your ideas of faith and the impending nature of death and the ideas of money and the hope that you are rich they guide your decisions between those two. And try and put yourself right there in the middle. The second thing that that I wanted to talk to you about is an opportunity for you. So I'm honored to have been asked by Muhammad and to have worked closely with him and his team in developing a money masterclass. And this is what we call where faith meets personal finance. A lot of personal finance courses are very, as Muhammad alluded to earlier, very kind of product based, and they're talking about the halal and haram and the functionality of financial products, and that's important. But I hope today you've seen that how many times our faith plays a huge role in how we make financial decisions. And so this is going to be a 6-week live online class that we're going to deliver. We're going to be covering about 6 major topics, one every week. So for example, in the first week, we'll come to
then this is where the Money Masterclass comes in. We wanted to give something super practical and super useful, but it's aligned with faith as well. We want to give you a financial roadmap. And like I said, it's sometimes so uncomfortable to talk about money because, let's be honest, it's money, right? We don't tell people how much money we make, right? The whole joke, don't tell your spouse how much money you make, or don't tell your parents how much money you make, or it's just the whole financial decisions, what to do with it. And sometimes if you talk about money, suddenly the discussion in the family goes really gets heated up quickly without like, what was going on here? Because a lot of money stories that we have growing up. Maybe you come up from a family that really money was a big issue. You come from family, money was not a big issue. So that plays up in your life. The question is what to do about it. So here you go. You can take a screenshot of these 10 points. But it's very, very important to kind of think about these things and really, ask yourself whether or not. So Sheikh Joe, like I said, mashallah, he developed a 6-week masterclass. So this is not something you can cover in 1 hour. It needs a proper, serious study. And guess what? It's one time. You have to do this for like 5 years. It's a 6-week program you're going to sacrifice some time for, sacrifice some investment for. But at least you know that I've gone through a program that tells me how to manage my money from a financial and personal finance perspective, and more importantly, from a spiritual and faith perspective as well. So, just to give you some stats, and Sheikh Joe, I love your thoughts on this. 56% of millennials don't have any money saved for retirement. And by the way, I'm not bashing millennials. I'm a millennial myself, right? So 56% of millennials don't have money saved for retirement. I mean, we got to face our own, look in the mirror, hold up the mirror and ask yourself, am I one of these stats? 86% of millennials cannot demonstrate basic financial literacy. If I ask you to read your credit card terms of statement, will you be able to understand exactly what each number means? What does APR stand for? What does it mean when you sign up an 18.6% credit card, annual APR? So stuff like that, like we don't have basic financial literacy. 41% of financial planning customers said they're running out of cash was the biggest concern. Ask yourself, is that your biggest concern? And about 2/3 of Americans' households don't even have a budget, right? And again, might be an American thing, but I'm sure it's a global thing. Joe, just thoughts on that?
If I can add one stat to that, and I think that we can probably get feedback from the attendees today. How many of you have been apprehensive to even talk to a financial advisor or to take initiative on your money because you were afraid that they weren't going to respect your values as a Muslim, that they were going to push you into something that was haram or questionable, or they weren't able to explain to you how that would fit into the circumstances that you live in? Because we're a very international audience. Some people in certain countries will have certain particulars that they need crafted to their situation, and others do not. But how many of you have just had that anxiety of talking to somebody, say, I just don't know, because they're probably going to try and sell me on something which I'm unable to discern whether it's really the right fit for me and whether that meets my values as a Muslim. Looking at these stats, I would say that, coupled with that anxiety that we as Muslims many times have, and that I've personally seen in most of my clients, then, the statistics here can probably go up,
Yes,
because if you have that anxiety, you won't, you're going to be more, more likely than not worried about financial literacy, maybe not saving for retirement, or maybe even doing things which are completely contradictory, given the resources that you have. I know people who make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and are broke at the end of every year because their fear of running out of cash makes them greedy and want to spend, and so they spend everything. And I know people, as I said, who, they're earning modest salaries, no more than $50,000 a year, and they're putting their children through college debt-free. How are they doing? It's because they have a core belief that they're acting according to before they even take initiative on making a financial decision.
SubhanAllah. So again, this is what this money master is about. So I want to ask Sheikh Joe to actually go in detail. If you guys could give us another 5-10 minutes, I want to go in detail. And of course, open up some of the Q&A as well.
Sure.
6 sessions, right? So these are once a week. So you're going to meet us every Saturday, once a week. And again, you're going to go to productiveness.com/money to know about the timing and start dates and all-in dates. But 6 sessions once a week. Walk us through how will this 6th masterclass help us connect faith to personal finance and actually give us something practical to go walk away with, inshallah.
So in these 6 sessions, we tried to design it to make it as practical and meaningful as possible for you. We will not be going into a lot of theory, but the theory that we do cover, we will be practicing it right away. Session 1 is called Taking Control. And the reason why that we call it Taking Control is because if you don't know what you have, you don't know where you're going. Allah says, فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ. So where are you going? After asking all of these other rhetorical questions about the actions that we do, فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ. Where are you going? You don't know what you have, you won't know what to do with it and where to go. So what we want to do in this session is a complete survey of everything that has to do with finances from all different aspects of your life. Documentation, numbers, creating, just putting all the numbers together as far as earnings and expenses and all of that. And what that's going to give us is the ability to understand not our financial net worth and our financial standing. And we'll have now a compendium of all of our numbers and all of our documents, and we'll be able to say, you know what, out of 5 things, I'm missing 3. I need to make the arrangements to get those things. Or I have all 5 that Joe asked for, but there are problems in each of them that I have to correct. If you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going and where you can end up. Session 2 is where we go into where's your money going now. We're going to take all of that information and I'm going to show you how to process it, how to use different financial ratios to understand, kind of give yourself a financial health checkup and understand what your money is doing for you and where it's going and what effect it has on your life. Create a workable budget. It'll be a high-level budget, but it'll be a workable budget that you'll be able to create. You'll be able to differentiate between the things that are wants and needs, the things that are absolutely necessary for your financial wherewithal and survival, and those things that you can sacrifice. And then from there, we move into session 3. And session 3 we call a barakah planning 1.0. And from there, this is where we now, we know what we have, we know where it's going. Okay, how do we leverage it to get the barakah and the blessings that we talked about earlier? How do we leverage it to make it work the best for our dunya as well as our deen, for our dunya as well as our akhirah? We'll talk, a little bit about the difference between the culture of barakah versus the culture of hustle. There's a lot of, people that talk, a lot of marketing about hustling out there, and that can be very detrimental, both to your faith and to your pocketbook. But if you have a culture of barakah, then you're increasing your faith and increasing, inshallah ta'ala, your pocketbook. What are the small things, small decisions that you can make that will lead to exponential growth in the future, both in mindset as well as in practice? And then how do we optimally, how do we allocate what we have optimally for the greatest amount of barakah? And that barakah, what returns to us in this life, as well as what we're depositing in the next life. So kind of like those treasure chests that we talked about. Session 4 is I think going to be one of the most fascinating sessions in this whole 6 weeks, and I think that you guys are going to enjoy it a lot. We're going to be talking about Islam and money psychology. A big part of finance, which is kind of burgeoning now, that is not taken into consideration enough, is behavioral finance. And how does our psychology and our behaviors determine where our money is and where it's going and where it will take us? And as Muslims, we have normative values about money that are dictated to us by our faith and that we want to see realized in our life, because we know by the promise of Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that they will become a reality. So we're going to go over something called the money minds. And we're going to talk about how our preconceived notions about money affect the way that we spend it or the way that we earn it. A lot of times we're making decisions on autopilot. So where does the niyyah and intentionality fit into there? We'll talk about the Islamic spiritual perspective on money. That'll be something that we'll go into detail about. And then how do we move away from a scarcity mindset where we are afraid that we're not going to get enough to a barakah mindset, a fadl mindset, where we know that Allah's bounty and blessing is there for us regardless. And then in session 5, we are going to talk about the stewardship of money. And we use the word stewardship here in its broadest sense. And we want to reorient concepts that we have many times been truncating or limiting. The idea of khilafah, the idea of, many times we talk about it as being a political authority and a leader and a vicegerent and things like that. Reality, it's about being a steward. It's about caring for the world. Prophet ﷺ said about the dunya, he said, وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ مُسْتَخْلِفَكُمْ فِيهَا فَيَنْظُرَ كَيْفَ تَعْمَلُونَ. Allah has placed you as stewards in this earth to see how you will act. So how we care for our money, the environment, and all the resources that we're given, we're going to talk about that. And there, we're going to talk about the typical topics of sadaqah and zakah, and a concept that I think you won't find anywhere else, and that is, having a stewardship portfolio, having a charity portfolio, and understanding that the same way that I invest in my life through, my financial investments, I also invest in my akhirah through my charity. And then lastly, Barakah Planning 2.0. We want to take the 5 previous sessions, they will all culminate into Barakah Planning 2.0. And that's where we're going to talk about, okay, now we've taken control. We know where their money is going. We've seen that small changes in our decisions can have huge results. We understand where our mind is vis-a-vis what we have and the decisions that we're making. We're now incorporating the idea of barakah and stewardship and proper care and investment in both dunya and akhirah into it. Now, how does that all fit into making better investment decisions, planning for major purchases, talking about our children's futures, both spiritually and financially, and caring for our extended families, and then passing that off to others when we leave and when we leave the world. And so that will everything will culminate in that session 6. So I'm super excited for this Money Masterclass. It's something that I really enjoy teaching people and kind of helping you come to those realizations. And I'm hoping that all of you, inshallah ta'ala, will want and are as excited as I am and want to join us, inshallah ta'ala, for the upcoming class.
Inshallah, absolutely. Now, one thing that we actually offering as a gift for anyone who signs up the masterclass is a free physical copy of the Barakah's Money Masterclass, which will send you a doorstep. So when you sign up for this masterclass, we'll actually get a free copy from Barakah's company. He sent us we got 50 of these copies actually. So we'll be sending them free to your doorstep as part of a thank you, as part of it's a gift. Because honestly, when I first, just tried to, when I started earning enough money to pay zakah, I was like, sometimes zakah can seem confusing, right? And Sheikh Joe, may Allah reward and bless him, wrote this really practical book with worksheets, with income, with explanation of how things work, was very, very helpful. So having this was very, very helpful. So this will become almost like a guide as well, especially in session 5 on stewardship and making it work, inshallah ta'ala. So the question is, what's the investment, right? This is Money Masterclass, what's the investment? So we've made it two options. One is easy installment plan. So for those of you who find, okay, it's a bit of an expensive plan, maybe a $99 per month for 6 months, you'll get, and I'll show you what exactly this involves, as well as, or pay in full and save $91 just by paying in full. Now, if you, either of these options, again, think about it in this perspective. Sheikh Joe's time, he normally does this one-on-one with people, and normally costs a lot more than this. The fact is, we have 6 whole sessions with Sheikh Joe himself, where he's going to go into these concepts that he normally teaches one-on-one with people as he coaches them through financial planning and through financial coaching with us, and the opportunity to ask as many questions we want and just have him guide us through this process over 6 weeks honestly, the way this is working out is actually way, way cheaper than trying to figure things out on your own in terms of time and expenses and money. Also, having someone that's both knowledge, very, very grounded in both knowledge. So I hope you see this as one small investment into your own future, one small investment into your children's future. And to be honest with you, if you feel like this is a lot or this is too much, just think about what's the relationship with if you don't attend this, if you don't understand what are the financial costs of you making those incremental decisions, unfortunately, that will hurt you in the long term. So I really hope you see that the value of this, that's way, way, way more than what we're offering. And it's something that we were offering at a very affordable rate for people who want to learn more about how to manage their money in a way that connects their faith with their personal finance. Now, both options, whether you choose the installment plan or the pay in full, you have access to 6 live online sessions with Sheikh Joe, which will have Q&A after for each session as well. You have lifetime access to recordings, so it's not just going to have this section and then going to disappear. If you can't attend it for some reason, you have lifetime access to recordings and handouts. You'll have a free Islamic will preparation checklist, which will be very, very helpful for you as well if you're preparing to think about your Islamic will. By the way, I had a friend of mine here in Dallas area wanted to go to a lawyer to set up an Islamic will, and the guy quoted him a couple of $1,000s just for the Islamic will part, preparing a legally valid Islamic will. We're giving you a checklist and also give you a platform, the My Wasiyah, with some details on how to sign up for My Wasiyah, which actually is much more affordable than going through a lawyer and getting an Islamic will prepared, because the work, especially My Wasiyah platform, is actually legally validated in the United States. Free copy of the book, the Simple Zakah Guide, which will be sent to all of you, inshallah ta'ala. You get free 1-year membership to Barakah Academy, which is launching today. If you go to barakah.com in a few hours, you'll see it live, and you'll see this is a big platform. This is actually we migrated from Productive Muslim Academy to Barakah Academy. I'll be sending announcements about that in the emails, inshallah ta'ala, but you get 1-year access, free access to Barakah Academy. We'll also have a free private Slack community for duration of the class. So we have one place in Slack channel where you can jump in, ask all these questions you had asked, but the halal investments, all that stuff. We're going to ask you all these questions, place where you can access Sheikh Joe. Again, having Sheikh Joe literally as your financial advisor for 6 weeks, I mean, that's where the beauty of having, and that's why I'm honored to have him on board to deliver this, and really, really thank for his time and effort is putting this masterclass. So free private Slack community for duration of the class. And then we have a very unique 30-day money-back guarantee. So the way this works is very simple. You can try 4 sessions. And even Sheikh Joe, when he first heard, he's like, what, are you serious? But I was like, yes, I'm serious. That's how much I trust the value of this masterclass. You can attend 4 sessions, right? You can pay for the masterclass, attend 4 sessions. If by the 4th session is like, nah, this is not worth it, I don't like this at all, we'll refund your money, no questions asked. So not only, it's not from the day you purchase, you can buy today, but the 30-day money-back guarantee will start from the first class. You literally can go for 4 sessions, and then by the end of the 4 sessions, you know what, Hamad, I'm sorry, I just didn't benefit from this masterclass. You just drop us an email, we'll refund your money, no questions asked. So this is actually a first in this industry. Nobody people like, oh, 30 money-back guarantee, but from the day you actually buy. So since we're starting September 14th, we'll make sure that you actually the money back guarantee starts September 14th and lasts for 4 sessions. By the 4th session, you say, you know what, yes, this actually paid by itself already, or you know what, actually is not for me. That's fine, no problem. We don't force you to have this if you don't like it, kind of thing. But I'm sure, again, we're so confident, inshallah, by Allah's permission, tawfiq, that this is something that's useful, beneficial, and very, very unique and rare, that I'm sure you'll find benefit, inshallah ta'ala. So how many live sessions per week? You have 6, so 1 session per week for 6 weeks, starting September 14th. The timing of the live sessions, you'll see it on the productivemuslim.com/money. Even has a link to check your local time zone, wherever you are in the world. If you can't attend live, you can have access to recordings. And how is this different from working with a financial planner accountant? I'll be honest with you, like Sheikh Joe mentioned, the fact you'll be armed with this knowledge. If you do choose to work with an accountant or financial planner, you'll know what to ask, what not to ask. You'll know it's halal, it's not halal. You'll know how to deal with some of these questions instead of being thrown at you products that you don't know if it's how to deal with them, inshallah ta'ala, or even fearing to make any decision. You'll at least be equipped with the knowledge. And finally, what kind of technical financial knowledge and skills you need? None, zero. Whether you are a finance whiz, whether you know every single product, or you're just totally clueless, like you don't know what your bank account stands for, don't worry. We'll walk you through this process and make it happen, inshallah ta'ala. So with that, I really look forward to seeing you at the productivemuslim.com/money masterclass. Sheikh Joe, I know that you probably have to run very, very soon. Just any last words or any comments or anything you'd like to wrap up before we wrap up, and any burning questions about anything that maybe Sheikh Joe covered today before we wrap up, because we've been here for a couple of hour and a half, more than expected. But just anything you'd like to share, wrap up, and before we close the shot on.
You know, all I can say is that, you know, if you, you know, we definitely would love to see you in the class. And, you know, if you can't make it to the class, then don't stop here. You know, continue to read and to learn about this topic, and to just understand what it is that really motivates you. You know, I was telling I teach a tafsir class here where I live, and we were talking about this idea of intentionality. And, you know, I said when I first began studying Islam 20-some years ago, I never really understood why scholars talked so much about intention, why they said that, you know, innamal a'malu binniyat, actions are by intention, is, you know, 1/4 or 1/2 of Islam. And I really understand now that it is it's the psychological motivators that we have that make a huge difference in why and, you know, why and where and what we do. You know, one of my teachers used to say, the carpet that's laid down in the masjid and the carpet that's laid down in the airport, what's the difference between them? The only difference is the intention that you make entering the building and what you do on that carpet. And one, you're just walking, waiting for a plane. The other, you're praying and making dhikr and reading Quran and making sujood. And so intentionality is huge. So if you can walk away with one thing today, I want each and every one of you to walk away with the intention to improve yourselves and improve your spiritual lives, your emotional lives, and by doing so, improve your financial lives as well.
Awesome, awesome, Sheikh Joe. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know we took more than half an hour extra from your time. Really appreciate it. And everyone else, Jazakumullah khair for joining us live, for being just being great. And also, yes, you will be getting the recordings of this, inshallah, within 24 hours. We'll just have to do some editing work, make sure that it's all cleaned up for you guys, inshallah. But we'll definitely send that to you, inshallah. All these questions about what is halal, what's mortgages, about all this financial decision question, this is what the Money Master is about. Again, we don't have time to go through all of in details, but like Sheikh Joe said, whether you sign up for the Masterclass or not, number one, set the intentions. Number two, if you join the Masterclass, great. If you cannot join the Masterclass for any reason, don't stop here. Check out Sheikh Joe Bradford's website. He writes a lot about this topic, so you can check out his content, check out his other well, and inshallah we'll send a link to some of his works as well, inshallah. And again, I hope all of you make those decisions that are filled with barakah, that are filled with tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is an attempt from Barakah Muslim Company to help you live the best version of yourself financially. With that, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you all with all the khair and barakah in this world and the next. Jazakumullah khair. Subhanak Allahumma hamdik. Ashhadu la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.